Lancaster House in London stood tall and proud. It was a nice day, but there was a serious feeling in the air. This place has seen important moments in history. Back in the past, after a big war, leaders from Britain, America, and Russia met here. They talked about the future of Europe. Now, years later, leaders were meeting here again because of another big problem, Ukraine. The situation in Ukraine was making everyone worried. It was not just about Ukraine. It was about the safety of all of Europe. People felt that things could get worse quickly. The world seemed to be at a turning point. There was a sense that important choices had to be made, and soon. The meeting at Lancaster House was called because of this urgent feeling. It was a time for leaders to talk and try to find a way forward. The weight of history was present, reminding everyone of the importance of their decisions. Two important people were at the center of this meeting: President Trump of the United States and Prime Minister Starmer of Britain. They both had different ways of looking at the world. President Trump was known for his direct and sometimes surprising approach. He often talked about America first and wanted quick solutions. Prime Minister Starmer, on the other hand, was seen as more traditional and focused on working with other countries. He believed in careful planning and international cooperation. Their different styles and ideas were going to be important as they discussed Ukraine. From the start, there were worries that the big countries in the West might not agree on what to do about Ukraine. Some countries had different ideas about how to handle Russia and the conflict. There was a fear that these differences could make it harder to help Ukraine and keep Europe safe. If the West was divided, it could make things worse. The meeting in London was also a chance to try and stop these divisions from growing. Everyone knew that working together was the best way to deal with the problems. One leader who came to London was the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni. Italy's position on defense spending had been questioned before, but she was trying to change that. Interestingly, she was the only European leader who had attended President Trump's inauguration. This made her a key person. Some thought she could help to connect different viewpoints. She seemed to want to build bridges between countries and find common ground. Her presence at the meeting was seen as important for bringing different sides together. She spoke clearly about the need to avoid division and said that Italy and the UK could help to bridge any gaps. Another important leader involved was President Macron of France. He, like others, was trying to talk to President Trump and persuade him to stay involved in helping Ukraine. In the past, British leaders might have been jealous if a French president got to Washington first, but now the feeling was different. The more leaders who could talk to Trump and convince him to support Ukraine, the better. The main aim was to make sure that America did not step back from its responsibilities in Europe. European leaders understood they needed to do more themselves, especially for security. But they also knew they needed America's support to make any peace plans strong and effective. The meeting in London was part of this bigger effort to get everyone on the same page and find a way to deal with the serious situation in Ukraine and ensure peace and security for Europe. It was a complex situation, with many different opinions and challenges, but the leaders gathered at Lancaster House knew they had to try and find a way forward together. President Trump had a clear way of seeing the problem in Ukraine. He believed the conflict needed to end quickly. For him, it was important to stop the fighting and find a solution as soon as possible. He felt the war was causing too much trouble and that it was time for action. His main goal was to get to a peace deal, and he had a plan in mind to make that happen. He thought that talking directly and making quick decisions was the best way to solve this problem. He was known for wanting to take charge and find solutions that were, in his view, practical and efficient. This approach shaped everything he did regarding Ukraine. He wanted to see results, and he wanted to see them fast. He believed that a strong leader could make things happen quickly, and that the situation in Ukraine needed exactly that kind of leadership to bring it to an end. President Trump's plan was focused on a ceasefire first. He wanted the fighting to stop. Then he wanted to make a deal. He seemed to be pushing for a quick agreement, maybe quicker than some other leaders thought was best. The idea was to get Ukraine and Russia to agree to stop fighting and then to talk about the future. He didn't seem to want to spend a long time on negotiations. Instead, he wanted to get to the point and make an agreement. Some people thought his plan was too simple and might not deal with all the important issues. They worried that a quick deal might not be a good deal for Ukraine in the long run. However, Trump believed that any deal was better than continued fighting and that it was time to move forward and find a way to stop the war. He felt that strong pressure was needed to bring both sides to the table and make them agree to his plan. There were worries about the kind of deal President Trump might be pushing for. Some people were concerned that he might be asking Ukraine to agree to things that were not good for them. There was talk that he was putting pressure on President Zelensky of Ukraine to accept his terms. This pressure made some people uneasy. They felt that Ukraine should be able to decide its own future and that no one should be forced into a bad deal. The details of Trump's plan were not completely clear, but the feeling was that he wanted a deal on his terms, and he was ready to push hard to get it. This raised questions about whether the deal would really protect Ukraine's interests, and whether it would lead to a lasting peace or just a temporary pause in the conflict. People were watching closely to see what exactly Trump was proposing and how Ukraine would react to it. Part of President Trump's plan seemed to involve a commercial deal. This was about getting access to minerals in Ukraine. It was mentioned that he wanted American companies to be involved in taking out these minerals. Some people thought that this was a key part of his plan and that it was a big reason why he was interested in making a deal with Ukraine. The idea was that American companies would invest in Ukraine, and in return, they would get to use Ukraine's natural resources. This part of the plan was controversial. Some people worried that it looked like America was trying to benefit from Ukraine's situation. They questioned whether this was fair to Ukraine and whether it was the right way to build a lasting peace. Others argued that it could be a way to help Ukraine's economy and create jobs, but the concerns about exploitation remained. Interestingly, Peter Mandelson, a well-known figure in Britain, supported President Trump's approach. Mandelson said that Trump's plan was the only show in town. He meant that it was the only real option on the table for negotiations. Mandelson felt that it was important to make Trump's plan work and that Britain should help to do that. He believed that even if it wasn't perfect, it was the only way to move forward and try to end the conflict. Starmer's approach was about long-term support and making sure any peace would truly last. He thought it was crucial to avoid quick fixes that might not solve the problem in the end. For him, working with allies and building a strong, united front was the key to helping Ukraine and ensuring peace in Europe. Starmer stressed how important it was for European countries to be united. He believed that if Europe spoke with one voice, it would be stronger and more effective in dealing with the situation in Ukraine. He encouraged all European nations to increase their support for Ukraine, both with money and military help. He talked about the need for more economic support to keep Ukraine going and more military aid to help them defend against attacks. Starmer felt that Europe had a responsibility to act and that working together was the best way to make a real difference. He wanted to see a strong and unified Europe taking the lead in supporting Ukraine and finding a path to peace. He knew that unity would send a strong message to Russia and show that Europe was serious about defending its values and interests. Britain, under Starmer's leadership, made a big financial promise to Ukraine. They announced a new package of support worth £2.2 billion. This was a large amount of money, and it showed Britain's commitment to helping Ukraine. Importantly, Starmer explained that this money would come from the profits of Russian assets that had been frozen in the UK, not directly from British taxpayers. This was a significant move. In addition to this loan, Starmer also announced a new deal to provide Ukraine with air defense missiles. These missiles, worth £1.6 billion, would be made in Belfast, creating jobs in the UK as well. This military aid was designed to help protect important places in Ukraine and strengthen their ability to defend themselves. Starmer emphasized that this support was vital for Ukraine's immediate defense and for securing a lasting peace in the future. Starmer was very clear that any peace deal for Ukraine had to be strong and lasting. He said that past agreements, like the Minsk agreements, had been too weak because Russia had not followed them properly. He did not want to repeat those mistakes. He insisted that any new deal must truly protect Ukraine's safety and its right to be an independent country. He said that Ukraine itself must be involved in making any peace agreement. It couldn't be decided by others without them. Starmer wanted a peace that was built on strength, one that Russia would respect and that would prevent future problems. He believed that a weak peace would not be a real peace at all and could even lead to more conflict later on. Therefore, he was determined to push for a deal that was solid and would genuinely secure Ukraine's future. To make sure a peace deal was properly protected, Starmer talked about creating a coalition of the willing. This meant that a group of countries would come together to guarantee the peace in Ukraine. Not every country might be able to join, but those that were willing would work together to make sure the peace was kept. Starmer said that Britain was ready to be a part of this coalition, offering to put boots on the ground and planes in the air if needed. He saw this as a way to provide real security for Ukraine after a peace deal was reached. He emphasized that while Europe would play a big role, it was also essential to have strong backing from the United States. He knew that US support was crucial for making this coalition effective and for sending a clear message about the commitment to peace in Ukraine. After his meeting with President Trump, Starmer was working hard to get the US to support his plan. He agreed with Trump that a peace deal was urgently needed. However, he believed that the peace had to be durable and properly guaranteed. He understood that US involvement was essential to achieve this. Starmer was trying to convince President Trump that a strong, lasting peace in Ukraine was in everyone's interest, including America's. He wanted to find common ground and work together with the US to deliver a solution. He knew that without US backing, any peace plan would be much weaker and less likely to succeed. Therefore, getting America on board was a top priority for Starmer and his strategy for Ukraine. Starmer also highlighted the importance of using frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine. He pointed out that these assets could be used to fund Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. He felt that it was only fair that Russia should pay for the damage caused by the conflict. Using these frozen assets was a way to do this without putting more burden on European or British taxpayers. This idea was gaining support in Europe as a practical way to both support Ukraine and hold Russia accountable. Starmer believed that this was a key step that needed to be taken to provide long-term financial support to Ukraine and to strengthen its position in any future negotiations. He saw it as a way to make Russia pay for its actions and to help Ukraine rebuild and secure its future. Finally, Starmer emphasized that European leaders were committed to rearming Europe. They understood that to ensure peace and security, Europe needed to be stronger militarily. This meant investing more in defense and building up their armed forces. This was seen as a long-term effort to make Europe more secure and less reliant on others for its defense. Strengthening Europe's defense capabilities was considered essential for deterring future aggression and for ensuring that Europe could play a strong role in maintaining peace and stability on the continent. Starmer saw this rearming effort as a vital part of the overall strategy to support Ukraine and to create a more secure future for Europe as a whole. The situation was still challenging, but Starmer and other leaders were determined to keep working together to find a way forward and to bring about a just and lasting peace for Ukraine.